Now, could the homegrown Israeli vaccine that is now undergoing clinical trials and expected to be approved soon be the solution to new variants of COVID that have proven more resistant to existing vaccines? Well, Defense Minister Benny Gantz announced yesterday that the Biological Institute in Israel has signed a memorandum of understanding with the company NRX Pharmaceuticals for development, manufacturing, and marketing rights of the vaccine called BriLife. NRX has arranged for rapid testing of the vaccine for final phase human trials in Israel, Georgia, and Ukraine. And joining us now is the founder of and CEO of NRX Pharmaceuticals, Professor Jonathan Javid, joining us from the town of Zichron Yaakov in Israel. And Professor Javid, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, let me ask you, I've read that this vaccine that's being developed is fairly unique in that it's what they call a live virus vaccine. Maybe explain what that is and why that it distinguishes it from the other vaccines out on the market.
Well, a live virus vaccine means that the vaccine itself is capable of replicating in a bioreactor. So it essentially manufactures itself. But more importantly, the thing you should really focus on is that this vaccine is capable of presenting the entire spike protein of the coronavirus to the body's immune system. The first generation vaccines built on the mRNA platform present a piece of the coronavirus spike to the immune system. And as the virus mutates, that piece has the potential to become less and less relevant to the new variants of the virus. Whereas with this live virus vaccine, the entire spike protein is on the vaccine. And as new variants emerge, the spike proteins of those new variants can very quickly be attached to the vaccine, giving the body the best possible chance to fight back against this lethal virus.
So in other words, this vaccine could be adjusted, as it were, to meet the, let's say, challenge of these variants that we continuously see the vaccine develop and become more resistant to those existing vaccines out there.
It's specifically designed to be rapidly adjustable to new variants as those variants emerge, as the public health authorities continue to watch for those variants. As you know, every person who comes in through the airport is swabbed. All of those samples are available to the public health authorities for developing the next generation of vaccine against the next generation of threats. You know, very much like the Iron Dome system. The Iron Dome system doesn't know where the next missile is coming from, but it's ready for it.
So I would guess that would make, since it has these new qualities, make these very crucial to carrying out of these next stage of clinical trials, what they call the 2B phase 3 trials that involve human subjects. And I understand your company is overseeing those. Tell us about those, organizing them, and what you'll be looking out for especially.
Well, it's important to remember that the IIBR, the Israel Institute of Biological Research, has already conducted phase 2 human trials with this vaccine. We already know that in hundreds, not thousands, not hundreds of thousands, but hundreds of people, the vaccine is showing no unexpected safety risk, and that it's showing early signs of efficacy. Our job is to scale this up, to take this specifically to countries where there's not a high vaccination rate, because you could never do these trials in Israel now that everybody's already gotten the first generation vaccine. So our job is to quickly scale up these clinical trials in regions where clinical trials like this are still feasible in order to prove the efficacy and the safety of the vaccine.
Right. I mentioned Georgia and Ukraine, so I would guess those are the countries, or two of the countries you'll be carrying out these trials.
Yes, well, we've mentioned those countries, and those are countries where we already have signed contracts with highly respected clinical research organizations. In fact, clinical research organizations that had direct experience in enrolling patients in trials of the first generation vaccines. So we know they know how to do the job. I've been over, we've met with the Minister of Health, we've met with the Prime Minister of Georgia. So we know that we have the support of Georgia, and we expect to visit Ukraine in the very near future.
Right. So I guess the million-dollar question, if these trials go well, or billion-dollar question, Professor Javid, is when it could be get final approval to go to market, and where will the vaccine be produced, and how quickly will that take?
Well, those are two important and different questions. Our objective is to have a readout from the phase 3 by the end of the year. It may not be a full readout showing that you have a long-term immunity to the virus, but it will certainly be what we call a serologic readout showing that you've made antibodies to the virus. And we anticipate that this is a vaccine that could be available to large numbers of people in the very early months of 2022.
Right. I'm just going to make a note, and you can respond to it. When they started this whole process, some people raised questions about whether Israel needs to develop a vaccine, whether it needs to develop its own production. But events have shown how clearly important it is for this country or any country to have that own domestically produced supply.
Well, that's part of it, but it's also important to remember that most Israelis have never heard of the Israeli Institute of Biological Research because it's an organization that has worked extremely effectively, but not worked in the harsh light of day. It's an organization whose traditions go back to their early partnership with Jonas Salk in the development of the polio vaccine. The thing that I've enjoyed most is walking in the door and seeing photographs of Jonas Salk with the early leaders of Israel. So these are people who have understood how to do this work for 70 years, and we're extremely excited to be partnered with them.
Right. I'll just clarify, one of the reasons many Israelis are not familiar is that a lot of the work they do is classified, defense-related or security-related work. Professor Jonathan Javid, we wish you all the success in developing this Israeli-made coronavirus vaccine. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.